when you get a bite in this type of cover, it's very hard to pull the fish out of. So you want to. This is 65-pound test braided line. It's very thin, so it slides down into the vegetation easy. But also, once you get the hook on, or once you get the fish on and get a bite, you can pull them out really quick. There's not a whole lot of fight with this particular technique, but it's very effective. The next thing I like in my setup and my equipment is how I set my bait up. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. I use a sinker stopper. Basically, you can get this from Bass Pro Shops. What it is it's just a little piece of rubber that kind of holds your bait right down, or excuse me, holds your weight right down at the bait. So it becomes one compact bait that you're presenting to the fish. The second thing I like to use is a tungsten weight. This particular weight is about 1.5 ounces. The tungsten is a lot denser weight than lead. It's a lot smaller, and so it makes it so that it can go through the vegetation easier. The next thing I like to rig up on this particular setup is a swivel. Just basically your standard barrel swivel. The reason I use the swivel is because once I rig the bait on it, I utilize the swivel to keep the bait attached to the hook from sliding down the hook. What happens when you're fishing the vegetation is it'll pull on the bait quite a bit. Once you get it on there, Texas rigged, and you have your bait all set up here, that vegetation's pulling on the bait quite a bit. When you pull it out of the vegetation, penetrate it through the vegetation, what that swivel does is it makes it so that bait won't slide down your hook. Instead of making 4 or 5 casts, what you'll find is that vegetation will start getting crowded up on the bait, and it'll start pulling it down, and you end up fixing your bait a lot more than you are flipping into the areas where the fish live. So it just makes that presentation that much easier. Last thing is the style of baits I like to use. I prefer smaller type baits. This one here is a sweet beaver. I also like to use a zoom speed crawl. Again, another real small bait. It's got some little swimming legs that kind of has a little bit different action. The sweet beaver has more of a gliding action. The speed crawl has more of a swimming action to it. And probably the other neat little bait I like to use, I thought I had one out here, but it's a zoom brush hog. And what I do with that brush hog is I kind of modify it a little bit and kind of make it like a tube bait. And the zoom brush hog is better than a tube bait because the plastic goes all the way through the bait. Whereas a tube, you get a lot of, when you get bid and you set the hook, the bait tends to wrap around the hook in this style of presentation. Whereas if you modify that zoom brush hog and kind of make it look like a tube, it's just a little bit different presentation, and it tends to get better hookups than an actual tube. Everybody cool with the equipment? Good. All right.